Welcome to another fresh episode of Blooming in Brisbane, and on tonight's episode we visit Don and Elizabeth in Avon Hills. Noel Burdett pops by with ingredients on how to make your own terrarium, but first let's go to Claire Bickle with how to set up a worm farm.
Hi, I'm here today to talk to you about the wonders of having your own worm farm and how to set one up and get all those goodies in form of fertiliser into your garden. Now today we've got one here that needs a little bit of a revamp. It's been loved and we've had a few issues with it, and we're going to talk a little bit about worm tips as well. What you need to do is to start off with a good bedding for your worms, and you can't just use any old worms. You can't just have earthworms. They need to be composting worms. These particular worms, the most popular varieties are tiger worms, red worms and blue worms. And these worms need to have a bedding. Just using a coir peat block that will expand really easily in about 4.5 litres of water. Warm water will help it expand more quickly. And we're actually going to place that into the very top tray. The very bottom tray is actually your tray that will collect any liquid that will leach down through your worm farm. Keep in mind though, to on a regular basis, turn that tap on to release out that worm wee, as we call it, or liquid gold. And then you can use that on your garden as a liquid fertiliser. If you don't do that, it can back up and the worms can drown, essentially. So we'll start off by putting in the coir peat, and we'll spread that out nice and evenly. So that they've got a really nice warm brown bedding to nestle down into. Next, you get your composting worms, and they usually come in a box ready to go. They also come in their own amount of compost, so they've had something to eat while they're in there. And I'm just going to tip those in while I'm talking to you. Now, worms don't like bright light, so as soon as I tip these worms in, they're going to scurry down in amongst their compost and into that coir peat that I've already put in there. I'll spread them out evenly, getting rid of a few bits and pieces. Once you've spread your worms out on top of their bedding and their compost, the next thing you need to think about is actually putting in something for them to eat. Now, a lot of people tend to overfeed their worms, so they put in lots and lots of kitchen scraps. But when you're just starting off, and here I've put in 500 worms, they're not going to get through lots and lots of food, so you've got to take that into account. Things like potato peelings, any vegetable scraps. Keep in mind though too that worms find it kind of difficult to get through large chunks of vegetation. So it's a good idea, if you want to be really nice, is to put a lot of stuff through a juicer or a whizzer. All that kind of stuff works well. Or cut up your old lettuce crops or any kitchen scraps that you have. The smaller it is, the easier it is for the worms to get through and eat. So no going and putting in a whole head of broccoli that's gone a bit off, or a whole watermelon skin. They really just have a lot of difficulty getting through that. You need to monitor how much they're getting through. If you've put in too much, you'll find that there'll be a lot of that greenery, a lot of those kitchen scraps still sitting there. They might even go mouldy if there's too much in there and they're not consuming it. So you'll need to remove that and start again with the scraps. Once you've done that, you've given them something to nibble on. The next option is really to use, probably you can buy worm blankets, but even I find, and some agree and some don't, but just a piece of wet newspaper will act as a bit of a blanket to help keep the moisture in, to regulate temperature, and also give them that a bit of darkness. With that, you put your lid on. Most of your lids will have an exclusion little screen like this to stop flies from getting in also. You don't want maggots in there. And basically, that's how you set up a worm farm. What you will get from that in the end is, as I said, the liquid gold, or the worm wee from the bottom. You will also get worm castings, and this takes time, so you need to have a little bit of patience. It can take quite a few months for those worms to eventually fill that tray up to the top with worm castings. Once they have gotten it right up to the top, that's when you'll add your second tray. Once the second tray is full up to the top, that's when you'll remove this first tray and have a whole load of worm castings to tip out into the garden as fertiliser. Some of your top tips that you need to think about is to keep your worm farm out of the sun. They don't like to be in there cooking. Keep it out of the rain because they do have air holes and these will fill up with water. If it's raining, as you can imagine, it will just back all the way up and your worms will drown. So out of the rain, out of the sun. If you find that you've got ants in your worm farm, it means your worm farm's probably gotten a bit too dry. So try and add some more moist material in the way of feeding, kitchen scraps and so forth. Maybe even get a watering can and watering can it through. If you find that you've got flies in there, that means you've probably put in something that's attracting the flies to start with, or your little exclusion screens aren't working. You might need to remove those maggots. Worms also like a sweet soil. So every 6 weeks or so, it wouldn't hurt to maybe give them a light dusting of some dolomite and just water that in. So in no time, with those top tips and what I've just shown you now, you should be able to have wonderful products like this worm wee and worm castings for your garden.